Hello. So, excuse me, we are in week 6 of this alignment amplifier group. And this week, our topic is going to be around setting and communicating goals and preferences, right? So this week we are in the throat chakra, which is centered around communication. And communication is how we connect with ourselves and with others, whether it be verbal or internalized communication. But regardless, this we can use to give ourselves the power to create our own future and to make sense of things that have happened in the past as well. And equally, we can use our own voice to ask for support. So today, what we're going to be working on is figuring out what goals you may have, how to communicate those goals, and how to communicate your preferences with others so that they can best support you. Generally speaking, people want to support each other, and sometimes it's just a matter of making sure that we are aware of what one another are working on, so that we can best help each other. So cool, let's jump in. So this week's session, we'll dive into appropriate ways to let someone in here. And let's kind of jump in. Cool. So in this week's session, we'll dive into appropriate ways to create food-related goals and mantras, and we'll work to connect to these and to bring these to reality. Sorry, I'm just trying to move the videos real quick. Okay, cool. We'll connect to the throat chakra by bringing these goals to our breath, hello, and discuss how to ask for support and communicate with others around what we're working on. And we're also going to talk today about this idea of food pushers, which is totally not an official term, but is, I think, something that we can find ourselves being from time to time, or that we can come into contact with other food pushers around us. And so understanding what we're working on, what our priorities are important for better understanding how to interact with those individuals as well. So cool. Excuse me. So we're going to start with creating goals around food and nutrition, body composition, all those kinds of things. In a second, I'm going to give you kind of a formula to use to think about this. But for now, just to think about, what is a goal or multiple goals that you have around food, nutrition, or body composition, right? So we're trying to pinpoint what's important to us. And what we're looking to do is create a statement that is as specific as possible. And I'll show you that in 1 second. And then we're going to ask ourselves why that thing is important to us. And then again, why is that important to us, right? And again, I'll give you an example in a second. From there, we're going to create a statement written in present tense. So like almost as if we have already accomplished it, what around your current goals are and your perspectives around food. And then from there, we're going to use that goal statement that we've written to create mantras, one or more mantras that we can use to support that goal and remind yourself of its importance. So, you know, not only is the mantra piece important for our own kind of identities, right? The people that we're trying to become or embody to achieve that goal, right? But mantras, in my experience, can also be super helpful to help you make decisions, right? So, you know, pretend one of your goals is around body composition and you're not terribly motivated to work out that day, right? If we can remind ourselves that one of my mantras is, I exercise because it makes me feel good, or whatever your mantra is, that can be a source of motivation or inspiration in that moment to make a decision that connects to your goal. Cool. So the statement that or the format that we're looking for, right, to create is going to be by a date. And then it's going to be I, the thing you want to accomplish, written in present tense as if you've already done it, because why it's important to you. I have some examples I'm going to share in a second as well, and then I'm going to give you time to kind of think through this. But for some people, the date part is not critical. It just doesn't necessarily apply. And then equally, sometimes we have certain events coming up or timelines in mind, or, you know, maybe it's a competition that you need a certain thing to be ready for, things like that, right? Then from there, as I mentioned, we create mantras based on the person you need to be to accomplish that thing. So check this out. This is just a sample, okay? If I was talking to a client and they said something along these lines, by July 15th, 2021, I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, cool. I understand the gist of what they're getting at. From there, I'm going to ask them why that's important. And they might say something like, because I want to feel comfortable in a bikini on my scheduled vacation. Okay, great. That's a great reason. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to ask them why again. Why is that important to you? And they might say, because I've struggled with confidence and self-love for as long as I can remember. And I imagine feeling good about myself in a bathing suit will help that. Cool. Now we have clarity as to why they want to lose 10 pounds, right? In this case, 10 pounds is not just some arbitrary number they pulled out of nowhere. They have a connection to that 10 pounds, right? But even from here, we can improve this statement, all right? Their full statement, rewritten, including kind of all those details, is by July 15th, 2021, I weigh 150 pounds, so written in present tense, because I value confidence, self-love, and comfort in my skin. Okay, so we've kind of put it all together here into one clear statement, right? Their mantras then that they might create is, I'm confident. I eat to fuel my body, right? So as I was mentioning before, these mantras can come into play and be handy when they're making decisions around their food, right? If, for example, their choice was between going to, you know, a fast food restaurant for dinner and eating the leftovers from last night, you can take a second and say, I eat to fuel my body, and make the choice that's most appropriate for where you're trying to get to. Okay, this is just an example. I have one more example here. One person might say, I want to become a better and stronger athlete. Okay, not too detailed here. Can we specify? I'm going to ask them why. One answer might be, I have always been the scrawny kid and I want to compete in kettlebell sport someday. Cool, now we're getting to real reasons why. Now, why is that important to you? It's the only sport or activity that I have ever felt excited about participating in. Awesome. So this person has hypothetically never felt like an athlete before, and now they're playing around with kettlebells and they're like, wow, this really makes me feel good. And now I want to become a better and stronger athlete. Awesome. By when is this important? December 2021. How will you know you've achieved this, right? So we started with kind of this arbitrary thought. And as you can see here, there's not one cut and dry way of creating these things. Sometimes we have to tease out what we're trying to get to. How will you know when you've achieved that? They would say, I participate in a kettlebell sport competition at the start of the new year. Cool, now let's create this into a clear statement. By December 2021, I am a kettlebell sport athlete because I am passionate about the sport and I feel ready to compete. Their mantras might be, I am an athlete and my food fuels my sport. It's cool to kind of see how this statement, right, this by December 21, comes from here where they said, I want to become a better and stronger athlete. We've gotten so much more specific, brought a timeline into play, understand when the goal will be accomplished, right? And now have mantras to support it as well. So really part of the goal setting process is this diving into specificity. Because sometimes when we just say, I want to be a better athlete, we're not clear on what that means. We don't know how we're going to accomplish that. It's hard to create a path towards something that is kind of not so clear. So creating goals around food nutrition is super, super important. And here's the key. And this is where the idea of the throat chakra comes into play. Once you have a goal written, it's important to share it with people around you. And certainly this is relevant people around you, right? We don't have to go around kind of just like screaming that we're going to be a kettlebell sport athlete. But a lot of times, you know, if you are working on a certain goal around athletics, around body composition, your habits or your routines might change a little bit to support that goal. And sometimes if we don't take people with us on this journey, it's difficult for them to be there for us, right? So if you wanted to be this kettlebell sport athlete and it means you're going to have to go to the gym 3 days a week, and you need help with childcare, for example, your significant other might be able to help you if they know that that's what you're working on, right? So this asking for support can be super, super important. Also adds a level of accountability, right? If you tell someone you're going to the gym 3 times a week and they're, moving around their schedule to support you, that's important for you to then follow through on your end of it. And as I mentioned, naturally, people want to help us and be supportive. So by sharing what we're working on, they can be our cheerleaders as well. One other kind of thing that I invite people to do is to write their mantras and goals in places where they're going to be reminded of them. So sometimes it's like, set an alarm reminder on your phone to go off at 11 a.m. every day that says, I'm an athlete. And even if it's just that simple reminder of mentally thinking about yourself being an athlete at that moment, that can be hugely beneficial, right? Maybe you put on a Post-it note in your bathroom window, and every time you brush your teeth, it's right there, or in your car or whatever. Making these pieces clear for you is just as important as asking support for others, right? Or from others. And then think about, what do you need to support yourself and hold yourself accountable? So if it is, setting blocking time in your schedule for time to go to the gym, or time to prep your food, or to go food shopping, or fill in the blank, whatever connects to your goal, write it down, and make sure that you make time for it, right? Set reminders for yourself. Think about what you need to best support yourself. And this might sound a little bit harsh, but sometimes when we say we have goals and then find it difficult to support ourselves towards those goals, or to try to find ways to support ourselves towards those goals, they're not actually real goals for you, or they're not actually that important if you're not willing to try to figure out how to make it work, right? And that's not meant to be, offensive or anything like that. That's why we ask ourselves those why questions multiple times, because we want to make sure that it's actually something that you want to do or that you find value in, right? Cool. Okay. One other piece to consider here is around data points. These may or may not be helpful depending on what your goals are, but you might want to ask yourself, would it be helpful to have pieces to track in connection to this goal to gauge progress? And if there are, you may consider picking 1 to 3 relevant pieces and keeping track of them weekly. All right, so not every single day, weekly. Choose things that are important to you and only things that you're okay tracking regularly, right? So for example, if you have a weight loss goal or a weight gain goal, but stepping on the scale is something that throws you off or has the power to impact your day, then maybe don't pick that. There are other ways to understand our body composition changes than the scale, right? And so making sure that you're okay tracking this item or whatever it is that you're picking, make sure that that's fine with you before you pick that thing, right? We don't want to pick pieces that are going to negatively impact us when we track them, right? Some examples could be weight, could be physical body measurements, could be how your clothes fit, energy levels, workouts, sleep, hunger levels. So depending on what your specific pieces are, so if we take that kettlebell sport example, it could be how many kettlebell snatches can you do on your right arm in 2 minutes, right? And that's something that you track on a regular basis to be able to track your progress, right? And again, I recommend picking 1 to 3 because sometimes just one isn't indicative of our overall progress. And we'll take weight for an example, right? If you have a weight goal or a body composition goal and you're working on your food plan and also working on your fitness, your weight itself may not change drastically, but your body composition might be changing. So if that was the case, I might recommend that that person also take a photo each week so that they can see visual changes in their body composition, right? And again, all these are relevant to whatever you pick for your goal. Cool. The last piece here to think about is timelines. As I mentioned before, sometimes having a by date is important when you're writing a goal. And while you want to be somewhat reasonable with your timelines for your goals, allowing for attainability, you also want to be a little bit excited or a little bit nervous about your ability to achieve it, right? That kind of adds a level of excitement to the whole thing. And with this being said, check in with how your goals make you feel, right? So if I were to say, you know, by June, I weigh 150 pounds because I want to feel confident in a bikini, but I don't actually think that timeline is achievable, then that might not be an appropriate timeline, right? Whereas if I picked that date and it feels like, oh, I might be able to do it, I might be close when I get there, like, great, that level of excitement is perfect. Be mindful, again, as I said, about the body weight metric and timelines. And keep in mind too the reality of weight, right? You can weigh multiple pounds different from morning to evening, from day to day. So many factors influence weight based on how recently you've eaten, how much water you had to drink, how much sodium you consumed the day before, where you're at in your menstrual cycle, if that applies to you, how hard your workouts have been. All of it is normal, right? So keeping this in mind while you're picking your dates or your metrics is going to be important as well. And timelines can always be adjusted if needed. Okay, so right now, we're gonna take a couple minutes to think through some goals that you may want to achieve and write some drafts. All right, so here's the plan. I'm gonna give everybody a couple minutes right now to kind of think through this a little bit, and then we'll go through the rest of the presentation. I'll stop the recording, and then if you wanna share or talk through it specifically, we can do that too, and no pressure then either, but just in case, all right? So what we're looking for again, is by date, I, something, the thing you want to accomplish, because blank. All right. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think about it. And one other thing to just keep in mind is remember to ask yourself why. Why is that thing important to you? All right, go ahead and take some time. I'm going to mute myself just in case of background noise, but think about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just write some notes. Okay, go ahead and wrap up what your thoughts are, and I promise I'll give some time to chat about it at the end as well. And with this all being said too, if you're watching this video at a later time, please feel free to reach out to me to chat through any goals that you might have through the Alignment Amplifier Network, through Instagram, Nutrition for Life Project, email me, nutritionforlifeproject@gmail.com. All of that is cool, and I'd be happy to chat with you about your goals. Okay, so what do we do now, right? We're again going to bring in this idea of the throat chakra. And here's what my recommendation is. If you can read your goal out loud to yourself or to a group, using the following structure. Here's what's going to be helpful. You're going to take a big deep breath in through your nose, fill your belly, and then exhale through your mouth, right? So we're literally working to connect our goal to our physical selves, right? So you're going to take that deep breath. You're going to read the goal nice and slowly. You're going to take another deep breath, and you're going to read a mantra nice and slowly. You're going to take another deep breath and read another mantra if you have one. Keep going for as long as you have mantras, and then take another deep breath, right? So again, what we're doing here is literally connecting our goals to our body, right? So if we think about one of the examples from earlier, it could be take a big breath. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was by July 15th, 2021, I weigh 150 pounds because I value confidence and how my body feels in a bikini. Another breath. One of my mantras is, I am confident. Another mantra could be, I eat to fuel my body. Right, so now I've said the words out loud to others or to myself, it doesn't matter, and followed this structure. Okay, cool. As I mentioned, if there are any questions or you need help with food creating goals, please reach out. I'm going to jump in now to a conversation about food pushers, and we're going to talk about what those are and how to deal with them. And then Sarah, as I mentioned, I'll pause the video, and if we want to talk about it after, we can. No pressure though. All right, so food pushers and how to deal with them. I thought this kind of meme was relevant, but it says when you're on a diet, but your friend isn't. Right, and here we have Snow White and the Wicked Witch, and she's offering her a cheeseburger, right? So essentially the kind of the joke here is when you're working on something, but a friend either doesn't know, isn't aware, doesn't care, whatever, and is trying to inadvertently move you away from what you're working on. So what can we do here? So a food pusher is someone who actively tempts others into eating certain things, or they have the power basically to derail your goals. Okay, this might sound extreme, and maybe you haven't had these types of interactions, and that's fine, but they do exist, right? And for many, this is a tough situation or person to deal with. It can be hard to say no to someone you love, maybe who has slaved over a certain meal or snack, and they just want to share it with you, right? I spent all day making this meal, and now you're not going to eat it because it doesn't fit your goals. That's hard, right? That's hard. So what can we do? We're going to talk about that. Maybe in their mind, it is acceptable to have you indulge, and then they can indulge, right? Maybe you've experienced like, I'll get ice cream if you get ice cream, right? And then it makes it easier to do that. Okay, so what can we do? The first thing, ask this person if they're willing to have a conversation with you about your goals. Sharing what you're working on and why you're making certain choices may be helpful to allowing others to understand why you may choose to or not to indulge with them at that time. With this being said too, having an understanding of your values and letting them come through in your communication can help. So again, taking that example from, the July 15th, I weigh 150 pounds because I want to feel confident bikini. If you were able to have a conversation with someone about why that's important to you, what you're working on specifically, I imagine that would be much easier for them to embrace and understand why you're making those choices that you are. Equally, having a clear stance on what your current food plan is huge. I'm not saying that you never indulge. If you've heard from me before, you know that I'm one who likes to integrate treats in a thoughtful manner. So definitely not saying never indulge, but being clear on what your food plan is huge, right? Are you someone who has one treat per day? Great. Then does that treat fit at that time? Cool, have it. If not, you can say, I only have one treat per day and I know I'm having ice cream later, and so I'm going to save it for that, right? Maybe you're following a macro plan. Does it fit that? Then you can make a decision, yes or no, right? Maybe you are vegan. Maybe you're a vegetarian. Maybe you don't eat XYZ because it has an allergic reaction for you. Any of these items that might be relevant, having a clear stance on them and being able to communicate your preferences is huge. more. If these strategies don't work, kindly tell this person that you can no longer accept their generous offers. Thank you, but no thank you. Right? Sometimes it's difficult, but at the end of the day, if they're not willing to hear what you're working on or what you're valuing in your life at that moment, cut it off, right? And lastly, I invite you to check in. Are you a food pusher? I know I definitely have been in my past at times, but sometimes you find it easier to indulge in things if other people are doing it. And I know I use this example already, but I'll get ice cream if you get ice cream, right? It makes it easier to do that. And recognizing these behaviors is the first step in starting to change them. Cool. Okay. So if you have questions about any of this, comments, need help, want help forming your goals, any of this kind of stuff, I'd be happy to have this conversation with you. As I mentioned, my Instagram is Nutrition for Life Project. You can email me nutritionforlifeproject@gmail.com, reach out through this Alignment Amplifier Network. Any of that is fair game, right? Thank you so much. If you are watching from the future, I'm going to pause this recording now, and then we can chat there if you would like. Okay, cool.